Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Groza, which I've kind of talked about on the channel a few different times. Even posted a video over on my second channel about it with the Kar 98 because I thought that the FFAR would receive some kind of nerf. Obviously, they went and kind of rebalanced some of the attachments for all the Cold War weapons that kind of threw a wrench in kind of people's basic loadouts. But overall, the biggest thing about the FFAR wasn't changed. They didn't affect the rate of fire, and they did not affect the damage values or range, which basically means the FFAR still has one of the fastest TTKs in all of Warzone. One other thing that kind of slipped under the radar, True Game Data ended up doing a video about this, and it was with the mil spec. It is kind of a similar thing that we've had in the past where something adds damage. It used to be the task force, and then it would also add damage range or hurt effective damage range, which is essentially range. I know a lot of people ask me about that. So we're going to talk about how viable this is. Is this going to be the new meta? Is it on track to replace the FFAR and people just don't realize it? If you enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, just double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. So there's obviously a lot of great options, but the first thing you really got to understand is how this particular thing works. True Game Data already did the breakdown on it. I cross-reference, and pretty much what happens is they added 2 damage points to pretty much all the areas. So the limbs, if it was 28 before, now it's 30. If it was 32 before, now it's 34. And we'll kind of go through the various damage profiles and what that actually means for the gun and if it makes it more viable. And on top of that, for whatever reason, the change to the damage also made it so it no longer has a damage drop-off, which means the effective damage range part is meaningless. The same thing that we've seen with the AUG and the M16, where they say that it reduces effective damage range, but it's always 40 to the body and anywhere else, and 71 or 72 to the head. Pretty much that is for infinity with those individual weapons. So they kind of done the same thing here, which is probably a complete error. I'm surprised they take so long. Even after all this time, they still continue to take very long with these updates. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this actually works. So pretty much what I've done is I've plugged in the damage values and the overall thing with the damage barrel. Obviously, there's a certain drop off, which is 31 meters. It doesn't impact the damage barrel. When you have that equipped, you're always going to get the same damage values, which are 30 and 30 for the limbs and the stomach. When you get to the chest, it always does 38, and always for the headshot, it does 47. Although not listed in its cons, it does increase your recoil the same way the Task Force barrel does. So it does have that going in the opposite direction for it, which makes it a little bit harder to use and a little bit less viable at range. On top of that, the iron sights are not aligned on the Groza. The actual hit markers and where you're shooting is up and to the left of where your crosshairs or where your actual iron sight is. It's not always going to be lined up. So it actually gives the illusion that it's harder to control than it actually is, even though its recoil pattern is fairly consistent with the FFAR. Pretty much what all these numbers break down to be is we have the TTK, all that type of stuff, and then I have a chart which is usually how I kind of figure out the damage values to, hey, how many chest shots do you need for this to drop the shots to kill, how many headshots. I can mess around and play with the values in yellow, and it kind of gives us an idea of how strong it is. So pretty much right here, if I plug in the 28 damage and 36 to the chest, what that tells us is with one chest shot, it will not change the time to kill. It's always still going to be 9, 9, 9. You need 4 chest shots to bring down the TTK from 9 shots down to 8 shots with the Groza, with the standard Groza, within 31 meters. And then it kind of continues on, and then it'll be always 8 shots to kill. 100% of the shots need to land in the chest with the Groza, with the standard barrels, to effectively drop the TTK from 9 down to 7. And you need at least 4 to 6 to drop it from 9 down to 8. So that's kind of how it is. So 4 is kind of the measuring stick. But even then, all of these TTKs are rather low until you actually get to the 7-shot TTK, which eventually drops it down to a 477. And that's where it starts to compete with the FFAR. And that's where you have so much inconsistency with this weapon, because you'll use it, it feels like it melts. It just means that you landed a lot of chest shots and headshots, and it felt like it deleted. But with this new barrel, it's a little bit more forgiving. And we see the same thing with the damage drop-off. You need a certain number of shots. It's always going to be 11 to 9 shots, which is kind of how it works out. But now, let's go ahead and take a look at this one right here that I'm kind of highlighted above my head here. This is with the special barrel that increases the damage. So you only need 2 shots to get that 8-shot kill instead of 4. So that is significantly easier to do. So it's going to be 2 shots to the chest, 6 anywhere else on the body except for the head, you'll get 8 shots to kill. Same thing, and then it ends up being the same for 4 and 4. But then after 5 shots to the chest, it actually drops down to 7. So instead of needing all 7, now you're getting drops to TTK in both areas. And this is the big part that I think is going to help the weapon a lot more than this one, because this will happen on occasion, especially if you're close, you're aiming for the chest, you throw a headshot in the mix. That's pretty doable. But this one is even more doable. 2 shots to the chest will automatically lower the TTK instead of feeling slow like we saw it here with this one, that essentially you're not getting it until you land a bunch. So the standard Groza is not that great because of the way the damage multipliers work. So you got to pay attention to how many shots to the chest and then how realistic is that chest TTK. And that's kind of where you end up with some issues with certain weapons where theoretically, if you land all the shots, they're good, but theoretically you have to land all of the shots, which is not good. Then when we come over here, we can compare this with the FFAR. And the FFAR essentially has just the 2 damage profiles. It does 9 to the limbs. And if you get 4 chest shots in the mix, which you can see right here, 4, it'll lower the TTK down to 8 shots. And that's all you need, 4 chest shots. And this TTK with 8 shots, because of the faster rate of fire, it allows you to get a TTK that is faster than the Groza. And that's the issue with the FFAR. You only need half your shots to hit the chest and the rest can land anywhere else. So it's very forgiving. So the odds of you getting this 467 millisecond TTK is very obtainable. The same way it is to get a 8-shot TTK for the Groza, which still isn't all that great of a TTK. You're better off using half the SMGs in this particular area. This TTK is not amazing by any means. It's okay, but you're going to be better off with the FFAR because you always get 533 even without landing any. You could just hit the toe a bunch of times. You still get faster TTK than what we're seeing with the Groza, even with this barrel. But once you start getting those other damage values in there, it's kind of how it works, right? Then when the FFAR drops off, no matter where you hit somebody, unless you're getting headshots, it's always 10 shots to kill, which means this TTK is always 600 milliseconds. And that's a part that ends up being where the Groza can kind of come in because obviously you get 2 headshots or 2 chest shots. It jumps down to 557 and you get that for infinity as long as you're able to hit the shots. And you can still obtain a 477 TTK at range if you're just a god at the game and you manage to hit those chest shots, get a headshot in the mix, hit the rest of the limbs, you can get that. So at range, the Groza can actually perform better in the current meta than the FFAR does. But the problem is it will give you a lot of inconsistency. Even with this new barrel, it's better. But to actually get this dominant TTK, I mean, you can land 2, 3, you'll get the 557, but the 557 is not special. Just like with the FFAR, the 533 isn't special. It's good and it's competitive, but the 467 and the 477 is where it's at. And you can see that you need 5 in this particular case and you need 4 with the FFAR. So half the shots in general. And then at range, it doesn't even matter. And that's where the FFAR is just like, you just land your shots, TTK is good, and you're going to still get a faster TTK if someone just hit all the limbs on there. So that's that particular part of it. So this would be the basic build for a majority of people. You would use it just like this. And then you would just use the KGB pad or the CQB pad, depending if you want the strafe speed, but this will help with the sprint to fire. And personally, I don't like the weapon with the iron sights because they're just not aligned. They shoot off to the side. Will they ever fix it? Probably not. Generally, what I do is I just don't run with that and I run with an optic. Usually it's just a microflex LED if I'm using this for close range. And since this isn't really helping the bullet velocity, it's not all that great for range. You're going to want one of these other ones. So you end up with that backwards scenario where it's like, well, it's not as good with the other barrels because the damage. But as long as you're able to hit your shot, this could be a sniper support build that you can use, and it'll kind of essentially replace the FFAR. But it feels kind of weird because you're using a microflex LED, which means you're not going to have as much mobility. So this is the big problem, is the iron sights as well. So it's a 2-part component that you really got to understand, and just acknowledge that if you run in microflex LED, you will be hitting way more shots than with the iron sight. because of where the actual placement on the iron sights are is not aligned. So hopefully that makes sense. You kind of got the options there for you of what you want to use. Then if you're going to use this more like an actual rifle, which I don't really think is going to be the case for most scenarios unless they change some things up, you probably go with the Gfuel composite just because it doesn't have any of the cons, but it does still give you bullet velocity and effective range, which is obviously going to take care of the basic damage values, which aren't particularly bad or good. They're just kind of in the top tier viable category where they would definitely be usable if you understand how to control the recoil. But other than that, that's kind of how it goes. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.